Which brings us to our last topic. Oleksandr Usyk versus Daniel Dubois. Now, Oleksandr Usyk is 38 years old. Dubois, 27. Guys, this might be a full half an hour for me talking about this one, so here it is. So both guys are 78-inch reach advantage, both 78. Usyk is 6'3", Dubois 6'5", and even though Usyk can be a southpaw fighter if he wants to, by the stance, but there's a lot of interesting things that does bring out boxing a tough run when it comes to boxers in the division. But guys, here's the thing. Boxers that are in their age at the time are pretty obvious that the older you are, the wiser you can be, but the younger you are, the more energy you have, but you have to be smart to understand the old people still have a dangerous chin to themselves, and they can still bring out a good heavy punch if they want to. So Daniel Dubois has to be careful. But here's the thing, guys. There's some boxers out there, boxing fights, that a younger fighter has lost against an old fighter before. Like Daniel Dubois already lost against an old fighter named Joe Joyce in 2020, and the guy was already in his mid-30s over that time. So it's crazy. In May of 2013, Vladimir Klitschko defended his titles when he was 37 years old against a 28-year-old Francisco Pianeta, a German guy or living born in Italy. And that guy was 28 years old. Even though he was a southpaw fighter, he got dominated in 6 rounds against Vladimir Klitschko. Easy win. Not bad. And, of course, at the time, there were other fighters that he was taking on not at his prime as much. But, guys, don't forget, back in April 2015, Vladimir Klitschko was 39 years old when Brian Jenkins was 30 years old at that time. And Klitschko won the title. Yes, they were 9 years apart of each other, just like Francisco Pianeta when he was 9 years apart of Klitschko. And Oleksandr Usyk and Daniel Dubois, they're 11 years apart of each other. So, but the thing is, guys, if Usyk does win this fight, I can see one more fight left in him until he's like 39 years old. Do I see him trying to break any record when it comes to undisputed champion or a long-reign champion like Klitschko? Good luck with that. And guys, ever since I heard that Counterpunch Boxing had a video that Usyk said after this fight he defeats Dubois, he'll have 2 fights left. That's just making it more ridiculous for boxing to say that he doesn't want to retire. And if he does lose, like, I just think maybe Usyk just wants someone to beat him up and win the fight deservingly. Like, who knows? And like I said before, guys, yes, Tyson Fury was 27 years old when Klitschko was 39 years old back in November. So they were 12 years apart of each other. But Klitschko, the problem was he didn't know where to land that right hand all the time because Fury was messing with his mind the whole time. It's crazy. So the thing is, guys, age does depend on the factor of that when it comes to how old you are. But yet again, Klitschko managed to handle a lot of that stuff pretty decently in some fighters that were in their 20s at the time. And there were fighters that he fought in their 30s and such, early 30s and almost mid-30s. But yet again, with everything going on, because here's the thing, guys. So my second thing I want to talk about, which I already talked about that, about age and their tail of the tape, Daniel Dubois' last fights were hard enough. After his Usyk loss, it was tough because, like, he had to earn out a 10-round knockout in the final seconds against Jarrell Miller, which was pretty good. While around that time, like, Usyk was already trying to take a break and just trying to offer out a fight with Tyson Fury, and the whole thing about everything else that was supposed to take place in February but took place in May, and that was bad enough. After the undisputed fight happened in May, things changed. A couple weeks later, Phil Pergovich was upset that they thought that the title was going to be vacant, but never did. And the problem about the Phil Pergovich and Daniel Dubois fight, which people still ignore to this day, is that people keep ignoring in round 7 where there's so much problems to talk about.
8.
Guys, here's the problem with the DDD versus Phil Pergovich fight, because the fight was so bad. Because, guys, I had the scorecards winning with only 1 or so point by Phil Pergovich winning the fight, which meant if the fight ended in a technical decision, I think Phil Perkovich should have been heavyweight champion of the IBF, which doesn't make sense. And people are saying, oh, well, they're in British. There is no such thing as technical decision. Well, if that's the case, then how did Jack Catterall defeat Harlem Eubank last couple weeks ago in the UK? And that ended in a decision, even when Jack Catterall had a cut on his eye and he still won the fight? That doesn't make no sense. I think British boxing are just a bunch of idiots that have no damn idea. And I'm sorry for all this. I'm just trying to find video footage of the fight and just try to explain it because, guys, the problem with Phil Perkovich is that the referee was a big idiot. The fight was such a bad term of disgustingness because Daniel Dubois cheated his way by pushing Phil Perkovich to the rope and turns his body this way in his head, hitting each angle of Phil Perkovich's chin. And referee John Latham didn't do one dilly-dally thing of actually preventing Dubois from not doing that. And after that 8th round, when everything came to place, he just settled nothing. Like, there's a moment where Daniel Dubois is trying to clinch out Hrgovic to the ropes and something like that. And a time during the final round of the ring, like he's trying to clinch, he grabs his ropes, he gets Phil Perkovich stuck clinching him, and he's turning his body like this to his head. Like, Daniel Dubois is an asshole. I hate him. Like, he cheated his way and just rubbing his head all over Hrgovic just to get him hurt more. And it was so bad. And when the referee gave him warning to not do that again, in round 8, after like 50 or a minute into the fight, and after, again, Dubois still rubbing his head all over Hrgovic, and then referee says, time, go to the rope, and then he gives him to the doctor. The doctor says, stop the fight, and Dubois wins by knockout, and Don Charles doesn't give a damn fuck about it? No wonder British people are assholes. They're the worst. And the thing was, John Latham, the referee that day, is British. It's so bad. And then his title defense would be against a British fighter, Anthony Joshua. And Anthony Joshua wasn't even ready because he didn't know that Dubois was going to hurt him early in the fight. And that was the whole thing that changed. So that does upset me. So, yeah, Daniel Dubois' last fights, like the AJ fight, okay, it brought him there. But AJ wasn't the fighter that he was before he lost against Andy Ruiz. So that's the problem. And even the Usyk fights. Like, the Jarrell Miller fight was more better than anything else, but this is just not what I set it on to see. So I don't know why people are still not questioning. Like, has Daniel Dubois changed after the Usyk fight? Yeah, but he earned it in a little bit of a dirtier way. That was the problem. Like, say what you want to say about it, but it just wasn't deserving to look at. He just didn't really earn it, in my opinion. So Usyk, on the other hand, 2024, put out great victories as well after his defense against Tyson Fury. So, yeah, his 23 wins and 14 knockouts are pretty good. And guys, I did forget to mention about this, and I did forget to talk about this when I talked about my top 3 best fights in boxing for Oleksandr Usyk. And guys, I forgot to mention, it's actually weird because, guys, back in 2013, during the early part, where Usyk defeated guys like Junior Fa, Eric Brenchland, Joe Joyce, Maujadov, and other guys that were not much contender fighters as much in the World Series of Boxing. But a guy named Mohammad Drazol, in March 22nd, 2013, pull out an amazing body punch, bringing down Oleksandr Usyk with a body punch on the belt line. And whether you think it was a knockout, because the referee did call it a knockout. So it isn't the first time that Usyk was knocked down to the ground before. There was a time when he lost by a KO loss in an amateurs against Artur Beterbiev, but there's nothing much you can say about that, about anything else when it comes to getting knocked out. But yeah, the thing is, guys, AJ and Dubois have found their spots about trying to defeat Oleksandr Usyk. And I think the problem is Usyk is more of a finisher when it comes to dominating the final rounds in boxing. So if Usyk does get something interesting in the first couple rounds or so, or if Dubois does get some early rounds winning, that depends on what the judges are going to do, and depends on who's the referee, whether it's British or not. Now, does that depend on anything else about the judges? It just goes to show you. And guys, even if Dubois does get knocked out by Usyk, are we going to get a little bit of a controversial slip, this or that? Because they're going to have to do something to stop out Dubois to win the fight. So guys, my prediction is that Dubois is going to win this fight by 12 rounds to decision. Like, he could manage to handle himself going 10 rounds by decision against Jarrell Miller, but he decided not to, just like he did to Kevin Johnson several years ago. And I would think to myself that he would have handled an interesting 12-round decision against Phil Perkovich. So I have a feeling he can go to decision points in this fight. It just depends on what Oleksandr Usyk is going to do. Is he going to score a couple of knockouts in? And if it is the referee going to count it controversial? Guys, my point is that Oleksandr Usyk is going to have to pick up the pace and understand what environment he's in, because he's in enemy territory as we speak. So he has to understand that there's going to be a lot of understanding when it comes to the boxers and the people that are involved in the sport are going to try to stop the person from winning the titles. Because everyone's idea is to give Daniel Dubois the chance to become champion. The problem is there's a lot of understanding when it comes to it, because Daniel Dubois, if he can get some early rounds in, that might help him. That only depends on how many rounds in the final rounds of the fight, because Usyk is always the person that dominates the final rounds. And if it depends on how many times he'll knock down Dubois, because he brought him down twice in the first fight. So it's going to be interesting to know what's going to happen. But guys, I think what Dubois has to do, it's not finding that one punch that can end it all. But I do have a feeling that if any body punch does come below the belt, depending if that referee is going to count it or not, is going to be controversial. So Usyk's team and Dubois' team are going to have a little bit of arguments behind the scenes on who's going to be the referee. Because as I'm making this video right now, I do have a feeling this is going to be controversial either way, because anyone is going to get controversial when it comes to any boxer that's actually trying to cheat their way to victory. And that's what I'm afraid of. They're going to bring in a lot of moments when it comes to referees and judges. Now, Usyk, guys, here's the thing. Usyk is going to do everything he can to try to look at the eyes, try to predict what Dubois' movement's going to be. Now, Dubois is still a young fighter. He has to learn about that. And Don Charles and his team are actually leaving him out of the shadows, out of the public eye for reasons. So there's not a lot of internet to understand about what Dubois is doing behind the scenes, because he's out of the spotlight. So they're trying to keep him together as best they can. Now, the problem is, guys, Daniel Dubois has already ducked out Joseph Parker, because even if he did win the fight, they don't know if he was going to be able to fight with Oleksandr Usyk. Now, guys, we don't know if this was going to be the case. Like, if Dubois did defeat Joseph Parker, what was going to happen then? Because that means he wasn't going to be ready to fight Usyk, because he's already tired from having a couple or several rounds, depending on how the fight ended. So, but I do have a feeling that Daniel Dubois will go 12 rounds of decision. I do have a feeling about that. It's going to be depending on who and when it's going to be a fighter that's going to try to not give up, because there's going to be a lot of opportunities that these boxers have to pull in that one punch. But guys, Dubois has to understand that even though Usyk is a tiny person, he's a couple of guys. Dubois is a couple inches couple. Daniel Dubois is only 2 inches taller than Oleksandr Usyk. And people say Oleksandr Usyk is a middleweight fighter. Well, you might be right about that. I almost thought of him as a super middleweight. or even a light heavyweight. Because, guys, I have seen Oleksandr Usyk's other videos before. And, guys, before he fought against AJ back in 2021 in his first fight, I did had questions about Oleksandr Usyk, saying that he was like Brian Pillman Sr., the referee, the wrestler from WCW and WWF, the guy that broke his legs and died from overdose in 97 that ended his life, because he was not a big guy. Like Brian Pillman, like guys, I thought Oleksandr Usyk was not a 6'3" tall guy. I thought he was 6 foot tall. That's what I thought. Because guys, Brian Pillman, he was no more than just a 6 foot tall person, 3 inches shorter than Usyk. So I really thought he was almost the same height as Brian Pillman, because Usyk is not much of a tall person than I thought, but 6'3" is pretty much decent. But I think the thing is, guys, when I look back at this, guys, I do see a lot of interesting things. Now, I'm already going to end the podcast here, guys, because I think it's probably for the best to end it here. But my final thoughts about this is this. Usyk can win this fight easily. But the thing is, in my opinion, Dubois can still have that opportunity. Remember, that one punch is all he has to do, whether it's below the belt. And depending on who the referee or the judges are, that depends. So we have to be careful, because referee John Latham helped Dubois win against Phil Pergovich, even when he gave Dubois a warning in round 7 after the shoving headbutts and butting his chin and trying to injure Pergovich's face with his head. And he did it again round 8, and when he said timeout, doctors came in, stepped in, and stopped the fight, giving Dubois a knockout win. They didn't even decide to go to a technical decision because the UK doesn't allow that. Well, how come they allow Jack Catterall defeating Harlem Eubank by technical decision in the UK a couple weeks ago, but not this fight? I just don't understand. It doesn't make sense. So I do question that. But to be honest, there's just so many problems with this entirety of the sport that I just don't know. I just don't know. Anyway, guys, I'm already done talking about this. It's already 2:08 right now, so I'm already thinking about going to the store and trying to pack up some stuff, and I have a lot of stuff to do today, guys, so who knows? Anyway, guys, thank you for watching this podcast. So, guys, this is my final thought. My final prediction is Daniel Dubois will go 12 rounds to decision with Usyk, because I do see him going to decision in this fight. I do have a feeling in my mind, that maybe the first couple rounds of the fight, Dubois might win the first couple rounds of the fight, and he might settle some interesting things, because he does have something to try to... He has to put a lot of pressure into Usyk. And I have a feeling if he can recover probably the mid part of the rounds, it only depends on how much Usyk is going to hurt him in the final rounds. Now, don't get me wrong. Tyson Fury did win the 12th and final round in their first meeting. So it's going to be interesting if Dubois can try to squeeze out one more. But depending on what the judges are going to score, and after the month of July happened with Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor and a couple controversies, and boxing being so corrupted this year, like it's WCW in the year 2000, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. So we'll see what happens. And with that being said, thank you for watching this episode. And